Hey everyone, welcome back. It's another episode of Jake Talks Star Wars, and today we are talking some Star Wars news. Today is Sunday, November 2nd, and just going over some of the things from this past week that kind of stuck out to me that were big deals in the Star Wars world. Not comprehensive by any means, but just a few things that kind of stuck out to me as kind of dominating, conversation and news for Star Wars this week. The biggest piece of news this week is the fact that Star Wars Visions dropped on Wednesday, which was a lot of fun. I definitely recommend checking out Volume 3 of Visions. There are some great episodes in there. There are some great episodes in the mix, and they are very, they're everything you'd expect. They're unique, they're artistic, they're visually stunning, they are sometimes risky, all the things you'd expect from Star Wars Visions. And I am going to be posting some more videos about my individual reactions to individual episodes later this week. So we will get some more of those this week. I didn't get into the mix too much last week because, it's busy. I'm working. It's Halloween with the kids and everything else. But we are going to continue on with our Visions discussions over the next week or so. And yeah, I look forward to it. And there are some really great episodes worth checking out that you should check out and savor it, because this is the last new Star Wars we are getting for a while. We're not getting any new Star Wars until May, when Mandalorian and Grogu releases. Next year does promise to be a big year, right? We get Mandalorian and Grogu next year. We get Ahsoka Season 2 next year, and Maul, Shadow Lord, at some point next year as well. So we got a lot to look forward to next year, but it's going to be a few months. So use Visions to tide you over and check it out. It's definitely worth checking out, and tune in for more of those Visions reactions and thought videos that are publishing, probably at least one later today and throughout the rest of the week. Another big piece of news that hit this week was this this revealing that in the Acolyte, that Chimere, or the Stranger, was kind of planned to be the first Knight of Ren. Like Leslie Headland, the showrunner, the creator of the Acolyte, director, showrunner, creator, all these things. She revealed in one of these interviews and books and things that she kind of planned for Chimere to be the first Knight of Ren, and that was going to be how she kind of got around the idea that Plagueis is not supposed to have him as an apprentice, that Plagueis is supposed to have Palpatine as an apprentice. Like, that's how she was going to kind of get around that. And it's a really interesting idea. And it brought up a lot of feelings in the Star Wars community, as everything does lately. It was pretty wild. I posted a couple times about the Acolyte, and I always laugh because that seems a surefire way to get some kind of engagement, whether it's on Threads or on Instagram or maybe even on YouTube. To get some kind of engagement is talking about the Acolyte, because there seems to be two general, maybe three general lanes when it comes to Acolyte opinions. You get people who loved it and think the Acolyte can do no wrong. You get people who hated it and think it's the worst thing that ever happened to Star Wars. And then you get other people who say, well, it had some problems, and it was, it had some problems here and there, but it wasn't terrible. It was pretty good. And this is the important piece, and I wanted to see where it was going. And that's probably where I fall into things the most, because the Acolyte definitely wasn't perfect. I felt like it had some problems, but nothing that's insurmountable, nothing that's a deal breaker, at least for me, right? Some of the dialogue was a little wonky. Sometimes the production value was a little wonky. I had trouble kind of thinking, like, where did they spend all this money, right? Because the Acolyte is apparently the most expensive show Disney Plus has made, and I'm not sure it's the best looking show, right? So I'm wondering where they spent all this money, but that's a me question. As far as dialogue and everything else, people want to complain about the Acolyte's dialogue all the time being bad and being poorly written. And I'm just kind of like, well, did you ever watch the original trilogy? Did you ever hear the actors in the original trilogy kind of complain about the dialogue and complain about how clunky it was, or complain about how difficult it was. Um, having stuff that's not that well written, or having stuff that's kind of awkward, is almost traditional in Star Wars in some ways. I mean, even look at the prequels. My goodness. So those kind of like those valid criticisms, sure, but it's kind of like, well, it's almost like Star Wars tradition at this point. Um, but no, so I don't think The Acolyte was terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but I also don't think it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Um, that being said, Chimere, the Stranger, is one of the most interesting characters of the series. And the fact that we got Plagueis teased, and the fact that, she did tease Chimere as the Knight of Ren with that Kylo Ren music that a lot of people picked up on when they first watched it. So these things were teased in the show, and then now she's talking about it after the fact. It's a real shame that we're not going to get to see the rest of it, right? Talk about engagement. I posted about The Acolyte on Threads, and it blew up. I was shocked because I've only got a few followers on Threads, but people come out of the woodwork to talk about The Acolyte, to talk about it being good, or talk about how bad they think it is. People absolutely come out of the woodwork for that. And it was interesting to see, the prevailing opinions, right? Because you get some people who are just like, it's terrible, it's awful, whatever, who cares? You got a lot of people who said, yeah, it wasn't great, but I wanted to see where it was going. Or they say, yeah, it wasn't great, but neither was a lot of Star Wars, or a lot of science fiction shows, right? If you look back at other science fiction shows throughout history, like The Next Generation, Star Trek The Next Generation, which is probably one of the greatest science fiction series of all time, whether you like Star Trek or not. The first season was terrible, right? But then the rest of it was incredible, right? So there was one person who commented, said, man, I really didn't like The Acolyte, but I wanted to see where the story was going. And I said, yeah, and that's the bummer. Now we'll never see where that story is going. Because that person could have been a person who says, man, season 1 of The Acolyte was terrible, but overall it's one of my favorite shows. Seasons 2 and 3 and whatever. Overall, it's one of my favorite shows. We'll never get that. We'll never understand. We'll never know, at least unless Disney decides to change it. So, big news there. Some interesting news. I think it could really work out really well, right? The idea that a Sith adjacent cult is started by a apprentice that was cast aside, right? So if Chimere was cast aside as an apprentice by Plagueis in favor of Palpatine, or maybe even in favor of like one of the twins, and then they get replaced later for Palpatine, right? So having this Sith apprentice who is cast aside in favor of someone else going off and starting his own cult, his own dark side cult, is pretty on brand for dark side users, right? It's pretty on brand for dark side users. It's pretty much standard for how they would behave and how they would act. So that's very realistic. And it also kind of ties in nicely to some of the things we've seen in canon lately, where in the comics and things like this, we're seeing the Knights of Ren show up during the original trilogy era, where they're showing up getting involved with like criminal syndicates and things like that. And there's a lot of verbiage around like, oh, the Knights of Ren, these dark side guys, they're not as good as they used to be. They're not as strong as they used to be. And that tracks too, right? So like if Chimere, the Stranger, starts the Knights of Ren, I mean, he was insane. He was insanely powerful, right? So if he starts it, and if a couple generations after him, if they're not as powerful as he is, or if he's not teaching them as well as he was taught himself, it tracks that maybe they're still dark side adjacent, but maybe they're not as powerful. Maybe they're not as powerful as they once were. And then, of course, you've got also the angle of they're being harangued by the Sith as well. So they're not only hiding from the Jedi, but they're hiding from the Sith, and that's preventing them from becoming as powerful as maybe they could, or as maybe as powerful as they were when they first started. So there's a lot of angles there that could work out really well. The actor who played Chimere / the Stranger, Manny Jacinto, was great. I would love, 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 love to see more of him as the Stranger. I think he did a great job. And overall, The Acolyte is a story I would like to see continued, but we'll see, right? And that's kind of been the theme the past couple weeks, is these revelations about these projects that could have been or never were. People are still going on about Ben Solo, right? The Ben Solo news is still making the rounds, and that kind of fits in nicely with this Acolyte Season 2 push for a lot of people as well. And sometimes it's the same people, right? I'm not saying the Venn diagram of people who want Season 2 of Acolyte and people who want more Ben Solo. I'm not saying that Venn diagram is a circle, but I am saying there's a lot of overlap between those two groups. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe we'll get more. Maybe Disney/Lucasfilm, mostly Disney, I think, will stop being quite so reactionary when it comes to these kind of decisions and look at the audience. Because I think there's a path forward for something like The Acolyte if they can get the budget under control. Like I said, it seems like they spent just an intense amount of money. So if they can get the budget under control, I think there's an audience, and I think there is a path forward for that. If the Ben Solo stuff keeps, if it grabs onto the fans enough, and if the fans demand it enough, there's maybe a path forward for that too. Who knows? So something else worth checking out. Worth thinking about, but definitely some ideas I would have liked to have seen continue, whether or not the Acolyte was super incredible or not. There was definitely a lot of potential there, and I'd like to see some of that potential carried on and carried forward. So we'll see what happens. But that's the big piece there. And of course, like I mentioned, Ben Solo is still making the rounds. People are still about Ben Solo and wanting more Ben Solo. I learned this week, and this is late to the party, I'm sure. Apparently it was done. Like, they paid the screenwriter. They had a fully written script. Like, Lucasfilm was ready to start soon, right? They were just waiting for the thumbs up from Bob Iger, and they were ready to start pretty quickly production. And it just got nixed, and it was apparently one of the first projects that got greenlit by Lucasfilm that Disney said, meh, no thank you. So that's a bummer too. But we'll see where it goes. People are still making a lot of noise about it. People are still really interested in it, so we'll see where it goes. And the last piece for Star Wars news I want to talk about today is something that I really, really, really would love. And it's, it's one of those things that we've been getting teased with for ages and ages and ages. I would love this to be true, but I'm hearing rumors that for 2027, there will be a re-release, a physical media re-release of the theatrical cuts of the original Star Wars trilogy. So a physical media re-release, 4K, Blu-ray, HD, the whole bit, re-release of the original trilogy of Star Wars, and without the special edition stuff, just the way it was released in '77 and the '80s and everything else. I would love that, and not because I'm a purist or anything like that. I think the special edition stuff is fine. I think that George, he made the changes he wanted to make. It was his property. He had the foresight to maintain creative control over those things, so he could make changes if he wanted to. So that's his vision, and we should respect that. And, that's canon. Whatever he did is canon. But I still think it would be really, really special to have those original cuts with the original work and the original special effects and all the original stuff. I think that would be really, really special and really, really important, because those are a piece of history. It's motion picture history. It's just a huge, huge deal. So I think it would be really great. And like I joked with my wife, I am ashamed of how much money I would pay for a boxed set, like a disc 4K boxed set of the original trilogy and the special editions, like packaged together as like a box set. I would pay almost any amount of money for that. I mean, even if they want to do all 9, right? If they want to do the prequels, the original, and the sequel trilogy, all 9, one big boxed set, I'd pay a bunch of money for that too. more, in fact, just to have it, just to have that piece of history, because not only, streaming's not forever. Maybe they can take stuff off of streaming. They can change things in streaming. Maybe streaming channels go under. I don't think Disney Plus is going to do that, but it could happen. So you get all those kind of things, but also too, it's special, right? I'm of that generation, and I think it's kind of going away, but I'm of that generation where I like having the physical copies of the stuff. I really do. Whether it's for practical reasons, like a power outage or the internet goes out, I can still watch movies, when I'm running on a generator or something like that, or just the sentimental things of like, I have it forever. And as long as I've got a machine that can play it, I have it forever. And I'm always gonna, which is kind of neat. But I would love, love, love this to be true. And Disney, if you're listening, I would pay many dollars to have a theatrical release boxed set. I would pay even more dollars to have a 9-disc boxed set of all 9 Skywalker movies. I would pay even more to have an edition, a special edition of all of those, or a special boxed set with the original cuts and the special edition cuts all together in one place. I would pay a lot. So if you're listening, please do it, because that would be pretty rad for the 50th anniversary in 2027. Another thing they're doing in 2027, obviously Celebration, which is what this whole channel is about, but also they're putting the original Star Wars in theaters, re-release in theaters, and apparently for IMAX, which is incredible. It's going to be awesome to see the Death Star in IMAX. I will be there. Yeah, I will be there. I will most assuredly, almost certainly, be there. That's definitely something I'm interested in doing. So I am looking forward to 2027. It is going to be a great year between Celebration and between seeing the original Star Wars in theaters, getting to take my kids to see the original Star Wars in theaters. They will be 12 and 8 at that point, 12 and 8, 12 and 9, something like that. So that'll be perfect. I'm super duper excited for that as well. And that's, I think, pretty much it. We're in November. We're getting into the holiday season. Things are getting busy around here, and that's okay. But things are getting busy around here, and that is A-okay. And I think that's it for today, guys. I think that's it for news anyway. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I get some of those Visions episodes done and released for you guys. Hopefully you enjoy those. And thanks for coming by. Thanks for listening. Take care of each other out there, and may the Force be with you. Bye-bye.